What's up, guys? Quick repair on this Hyundai Palisade. Repair on the quarter, repair on the rear door. Whole bunch of trim pieces. It's a nice color blue though. We're gonna use some UV primer, prep it up. I'm gonna show you how to do it from start to finish. So let's do it. First things first, I always like to do a little pre-cleaning. It helps my sandpaper last longer and also helps the process go a lot faster. I like to start with some Sprayway glass cleaner. I've seen other guys use other cleaners, but I've only used Sprayway, and in my opinion, I think Sprayway is the best, but that's kind of biased since I haven't used any others. But I wouldn't recommend using something with ammonia like Windex or something like that. Sprayway just seems to work as a really good cleaner, so that's why I like it. Then once that's all dehydrated with that same rag, I'm gonna hit it with some wax and grease remover. I like the microfiber rags. You can just throw them in the wash when you're done. They seem to clean a lot better. I like to use them in the booth as well. And then the wax and grease remover just helps remove the adhesive. That's like the only thing the wax and grease remover removes is any leftover residue from stickers or PPF or anything like that. The glass cleaner is really what does majority of the cleaning. And that's just a substitution for my waterborne cleaner. And that's only because my waterborne cleaner is so expensive in comparison to the glass cleaner. Quick wipe, we're done. For sanding, I like to start with a red Scotch-Brite. I like to start on my repair area first and then work my way out. So by the time I get to the edges where I'm not really putting base, it's gonna be a lot finer. The red Scotch-Brite tend to burn through edges a lot faster than a gray Scotch-Brite, so if you're new to this, you should use a gray Scotch-Brite. But again, I'm gonna just start in my repair area, giving it a quick hand sanding. Pretty much run the red Scotch-Brite over the whole door like this. So I'm gonna come back to you when I'm ready to use my DA. All right, I got the door all prepped up with red Scotch-Brite, got it all dulled out. Like I said, you mainly wanna start on the repairs and then focus kind of on the edges once you've done with the repair area and that red Scotch-Brite is a little bit finer. You could use gray if you're new to this. But like I said, I just like to hit the edges mainly and just over the whole area. It just feels like it helps my sandpaper like cut faster. Possibly doesn't, I don't know, it's just an opinion. But I got some 500 grit sandpaper. I'm gonna hit about 6 inches out from the repair area type shit. And that's just to help my primer stick a little bit better. I'm gonna save this piece of 500 grit for a little bit later once I'm done priming, because I'm gonna also use this sandpaper to finish off my primer once I prime it and block it. So I'm gonna run the 500 grit, like I said, 6 inches out from the repair, and then we'll be able to 800 grit the rest, and I'll come back to you before I 800 grit the rest of the blend panel. So once that 500 grit is pretty much done, you want to take your 800 grit on your DA and finish out the rest of the blend panel. So we got the blend panel sanded down with 800, got the repair area sanded down with 500, pretty much ready for UV primer. Got it blown off. We'll throw some wax and grease remover on it just to give it a quick wipe. Since everything's pretty much prepped and ready, I'm gonna go ahead and tape it off for primer. So I'm gonna come back to you when that's ready. So taping up for primer is pretty easy. Just throw some foam tape in between the gaps or whatnot. If it's in between the fender, if this is like the fender and the front door, you can always stick some cardboard in there as well. I've seen people use that trick. I just use flutter tape or a soft edge tape. I make it with my leg. I use 1.5 inches, so like I'll rip a piece, I'll rip a long piece or whatnot. Then I'll put my leg up on something, and then I'll just start it and I'll just make it with my own leg, but something like that. And normally I just put that 6 inches away from the damage, and if it's really close, it's because there's a body line and it leaves a real soft edge, and it's not as difficult to sand out. And if you do miss part of that hard edge, it's not as noticeable after you paint it. There's companies out there like Collision Edge that makes like the tape caddy that I use. They also make this is a 3/4 inch flutter tape or soft edge tape. So pretty much the same thing, but it makes it for you. I messed it up right there. The only reason why I don't like this is because this 3M tape doesn't really stick all that well, in my opinion. So I like having a little bit more girth at the end of my tape. That's why I like making it with my leg. Bam. But that's pretty much what I did, so we're pretty much ready for UV primer, so let's get to it. This is what I normally use besides the Sickens. This is my Speed Hector 9002. This is the liter version, which has a lot more build than the aerosol. Got these 3M UV tinted PPS cups that I just keep it in there, give it a quick 5-minute shake and stir, and then I use my 3M primer gun. This is a 1-2 HVLP tip. For UV primer, I like to do it just the same as 2K primer. I like to give it 3 coats. And this does not overspray like catalyzed 2K primer, so you don't have to go real crazy with the paper either. All right, whenever you prime, you like to start as far back as possible and then move your way in. So there's 3 coats of primer only on the bodywork and not 3 coats of primer out here. So it'll be 1 coat. Then your second coat would start here. So you'll still have 2 coats, and then your third coat, you'll start a little bit just like right on the bodywork itself. And again, that's just so you have the ultimate build right on where you need it and not farther out. So I like using this Dent Fix UV light. It comes with a little tripod and whatnot, and I'll just set it up for 2 minutes, and then once it cuts off, I'll check it with the back of my nails, and then I'll put 2 and the third coat on. So, all right, once that's all primed and done, you just want to take some 320 and just run it over any of the mud areas. You just want to make sure everything is completely flat, and then we'll finish off with that old piece of 500 grit that we used on our DA earlier. Whenever you block, you want to make sure you're going a cross-hatch motion just to make sure it's completely smooth. Try your best to go right up to those body lines, but not over them. We won't have to go too crazy with blocking on this because there wasn't very many mud, just a whole bunch of cut-throughs. Like I said, don't have to go real crazy this time with blocking because, like I said, there's only some mud here and some mud back here. So I'm gonna finish off the rest of this texture with some guide coat and that old piece of 500 grit from earlier. Alrighty, and that's pretty much it. And then if there's any edges that I can't really get with my DA, I'll take a piece of red Scotch-Brite, use that piece of 500 inside of there, just to make sure it just smoothens those grooves that my fingers could possibly leave. And I just want to hit any area that I don't like or that still has texture to it. That's pretty much it. When the guide coat's all done, you're pretty much ready for taping in the booth. Alrighty, gave that a final blow. I'm gonna finish off with some glass cleaner just to help my tape sticks better in the booth. I'm gonna get this wiped down and put in the booth and taped up, and when I'm all done, I'll come back to you. Once I got it all taped up in the booth, it's almost ready for paint. Just need to wipe it down with some waterborne cleaner. I like using these microfiber rags because it doesn't leave hardly any lint, and I feel like it gets my project a lot cleaner. I like to do one rag really wet. I leave the other one dry, so I'll do a wipe on, wipe off method. Wipe on with this wet one. Do a panel at a time. And then before that panel can completely dehydrate, I'll wipe it dry with the other rag. All right, when it's all wiped down, I like hitting it with these beige Crystal Tech rags, just knock off any extra dirt nibs that I might have missed. And then after hitting it with that Tech rag, I like hitting it with the anti-stat gun. So now that I'm done with everything, I like to seal my primer up before I put my base on. And sometimes the sealer can go too far inside the door jambs. So I like using these bigger fine line pieces of tape. And if you just line that right in there on the gap, it just prevents your sealer from going so far inside the door jamb. Because they will never notice the base inside the door jamb, but if you have sealer in there, it's not the same color as base, so they'll notice it. It's called a sealer's edge. And sometimes that happens, so you'll just throw this fine line in there like that. Throw a little bit of 1K etch on any of these metal burn throughs. So now I got some Speed Hector 5650. This is the waterborne sealer, and then I'll just go ahead and put my sealer on once that etch is gone, is dehydrated, because you don't want those two to mix. And once that's all done, you want to make sure you pull that fine line while it's still wet. And there you go. And once that's dehydrated, we'll come back for base. Alrighty, once my sealer's all dehydrated, I like using these green Centaura Tech rags. You pull them apart to activate them, and I just wipe off any overspray that where my sealer might have landed where I didn't want it to land. So now also run over my sealer real quick as well. Remember, with any type of wiping process, you want to hit it with the anti-stack gun if you have one. First things first is wet bed, which is clear base coat, and that just helps any overspray that I'm not putting directly on my repair area. Anything that falls on the panel, it helps it lay in something wet so it can lay smooth and evenly, because you want metallics to lay flat. You don't want them to stick straight up, because if they stick straight up, they can look like dirt. Pretty much using any gun for my wet bed, you just want it to go on there uniform and evenly. So we got our Luma 3 Exodus. This is the 1.3. We'll be shooting this at 26 PSI. We'll give it 1.5 coats. You want to make sure your wet bed is on there uniformly and evenly, and if it's on a hotter, less humid day, you want to make sure you put more on so it can stay wetter for longer, and if it's more humid, you can probably use a lot less. We'll do a reverse blend. I'll start with almost an orientation coat, and then I'll scoot closer and closer. I don't like to get my sealer wet with wet bed, because if you get it too wet, it can create what's called splashing. So I finished my door blend, and I'm gonna blend the quarter, starting with almost an orientation coat, pulling it more and more as I get closer and closer to the repair, and now I can focus on nothing but coverage. And as you see, we can work on nothing but coverage, and we no longer have to go anywhere near our blends anymore. We just focus on covering up that sealer. And then once that's all done, we just finish that out with an orientation coat, which is letting your metallics fall on there nice and evenly, uniformly. And you want to take that orientation coat all the way up to where you started that first blend. So we're going to be using our Luma 3 Exodus. This is the 1.5. We'll use it at 28 PSI. This is Speed's Hecker 8600. High solids clear. Always appreciate it if you made it this far. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll give this 1.5 coats. I'll show you what it'll look like when it's done, and that's pretty much it. Peace.